Hello and welcome to this session. I'm Raghav and in this session we will learn element identification in ExcelQ. This is going to be very important and element identification is a very critical and very important topic in test automation. This session is going to be very useful throughout your test automation, whether you are working in ExcelQ or in general. So I will request you to watch the complete session very carefully and you can also do hands-on on ExcelQ. In this session, I'm going to show you the general ways of element identification. We will see how to add elements in ExcelQ, all the ways of element addition, and then how ExcelQ identifies the elements. We will also see how we use neighborhood elements for creating unique locators, and I will show you some useful tips and examples. So let's get started. Now, if I go to any of the web page, there are some elements or some objects on a web page. It can be a text box, a button, some links, a drop down, a radio button. Whatever you see on a web page is an object or an element. Now, every element on the web page has some unique properties or some attributes. If I do a right click on this Google search button and go to inspect, it will open the DOM or the document object model, and here you can see all the properties of this element. It is of type input, and then we have the class attribute. It has some value and some other attributes. It has a name attribute, you can see here, and the value is btnk. So you can identify or locate the element based on these properties or attributes. If I go to our QBank application and I go to the username field and right click and go to inspect, here again you can see this is of type input and it has attributes like type and ID and so on. So based on these attributes, we can create locators that will identify and locate this element on the web page, and we can use that in automation. Now, if I go to ExcelQ, and in ExcelQ, there are various ways where you can add elements in the element repository. One of the straightforward ways is you can create a context, and let me go to one of our earlier created context. I will go to the login page context, and we have seen this earlier. When you create a context, we have the option to record a view. So I will go to this recorded view. You can also record a new view. Now here we have this view for the login page, and here we have all these elements. Now you can directly do a right click here and say add to repository, and if I select any element which is already present in the repository, if I right click, I get the option to view element, and here we have the element section where you can see all the elements added to the repository. Now if I go to the user input element, I get this element explorer in ExcelQ, and the ExcelQ element explorer is very powerful. Now in ExcelQ you can also create a view or a context and add elements directly while creating actions. If I go to any of the actions, let me go to the login to QBank action, and here again you can see we have got this view which is collapsed. I will click here to expand the view, and here I see the view. I can directly do a right click from here and then add the element to the repository, and here you can see we have the element section. If I go to the element section, I can go to any of the element. All these elements are already added, and I can click on this restore button here so that I can see the view and also see the element on the view. So here it is highlighting the username field. So we have multiple ways. You can create a context and create a view and then add the elements, or you can do it on the fly while you are creating the action. And whenever you click on the element in the element repository, you can see the element explorer, which is a very powerful tool, and we will see some of the features. And now we will see how ExcelQ identify elements using the element tree. So here this is the AccelQ element explorer, and when you go to any of the element, you can see the element. Here you can see the element is represented by this E icon, and then you can see its parents. So all these are shown here. In case this element has some child, it will also be shown here like D1, D2, etc. And when you hover over any of these, you can see it shows us the type. This is of input type, this is div type, this is form type. And when I click on this element, I will restore the view. Here it shows the attributes and its properties or values. You can also see the attributes which are selected are being used for locating the element, and then we have the option to review and also edit or add new properties or attributes as per our requirement. Now if I make any change or if I add any new attributes, here you can see I get a real-time feedback that if I do this change, what will be the match count. So they should always be a unique match, or the number should always be 1 here. So here it gives me a live feedback, and then I can cancel or update. I can also go to this advanced link, and here in case I want to use some custom selector of type jQuery, CSS or XPath, I can do that. Now in case you have a lot of elements available here, you always have the option to search for the elements from here. You can sort the elements by name, element type or alerts. And let me go back to any of the elements here. So you can see we have this button and it is identify the type element. I can make any changes and I get a live feedback or a real-time feedback of my change. If I go back to the user input element, and here suppose I select the class here. Now if you see, when I select class, it is giving me information, and if I go here, it says the attribute may be unreliable for element identification because of the reasons provided here. And I can actually click here and see all the classes being used, and you can see we have ng, pristine, ng, empty. All these are Angular classes, and these can change if I change the version of the framework. So therefore it is not very reliable. I can either select the options from here, I can remove some classes and I can only keep what I require, or I can altogether remove the class attribute, and still I'm getting a unique match here. So that means I am still okay without using the class. So you can see how powerful this is. You get real-time feedback and all the options you can review, you can make the changes and get the feedback what will happen if you make this change, and you can do all these options from here. Now let us go to the next level and see how we can use neighborhood elements for element identification. I will go to a different action. Let me cancel this, and if I go to actions, and I had created this action update user information which is on the change password page. You can see it is on this change password context. If I go here and if I show you the view, I will open the view, and here I am on the change password page. So this is the action that goes from the change password page to the account summary page. So I will go back to the action and I will expand the view, and here I will add the new password field. So I will do a right click here and say add to repository, and this opens the element properties. And here if you see, I can see the element node here with this blue color, and also I can see this A2 parent with this blue color. So this color highlights that the attributes of these two nodes are being used for element identification. So this is very straightforward and handy to know what all nodes in the hierarchy are being used for the identification. Now if I go to the element and click here, I can see it is using the type attributes, the value is password, and it is not using class. As you can see, it says it is unreliable, and I can also see the match count is 1. If I go to the A2 parent, let me cancel this and I will go to the A2 parent, and you can see here it is using the ID and the class from A2. However, for the class it is showing me the information that this can be unreliable because of these following reasons. And if I go to the value here, you can see we have some number here which may not be a reliable way to identify the element. I can remove this, or I can remove the entire class, and still I'm able to get the unique count. If I remove the ID as well for A2, now I'm not getting a unique count. You can see it is saying this change will match 3 elements, and if I check on the view, you can see it is matching 3 elements. Therefore, I have to use the ID, and you can see here in this case, because the attributes of the element itself were not sufficient to identify the element uniquely, therefore it has gone to the neighbor, which is the A2 parent, and it is using the ID from there. So in case you are not able to identify a unique element by the attributes of the element itself, you always have the option to go to the neighboring parent or node, and then you can use the attributes from there as well. Now let me show you some very useful examples, and the data and information I'm going to show you here will also be available online, and I will add a link to the resource once it is available online in the description of this video, so you can check the description so that you can get to this data and information. Now here we have some best practices to select the right set of attributes. Now for element identification, two very important features are: we should use locators which can uniquely identify the element on the web page, and the second thing is this locator should not break whenever there are some changes on the web application or on the elements. For example, if the developer starts using a different framework, or maybe on a new release there are some minor changes, all these changes should not impact the element locators, and our locator strategies should not break. So here are some options. You can use multiple attribute combination so that you get a unique locator. Also, it is important to keep the minimal set of attributes for uniqueness. If you try to select more attributes, the chances of breakage will become more. If any of those attributes changes in the future, it can break. So try to use a minimal set of attributes. We can also use regular expressions, and I will show you in a moment. If I go to the next page, here we have an example of numeric values or random data. So we should always avoid attributes with random data or non-functional values. For example, here in this case, you can see we have ID, however the value is a number and it can be dynamic, so you should avoid using this. Whereas we have a placeholder where we have a stable value, so you can use this. So use a better alternative in case you find any random or non-functional or dynamic values. The second tip here is you should try using the minimal set of attributes that provide uniqueness. Now in this case you can see we have class as well as placeholders, and both of these attributes provide a uniqueness to the locators even if we use any one of these. So if you are able to get a unique locator by using a single attributes, you can go with that. There is no need of providing or adding multiple attributes without much use. So avoid redundant attributes. Here we have a very important tip that you should always select the right attributes. Now in this case you can see the href attribute which has some value which is a JavaScript value, and this can be dynamic and might not be the best to identify the element. And if you see here in the href attribute, we have a link which looks okay and it will be able to identify the element uniquely. However, here you should take care and decide if you want to go with this. In case you are going to run your automation on multiple environments like a QA environment, a regression environment, this link may also change according to the environment. So you can take a decision whether you want to go with this or not. So this is also important to select the right set of attributes. We have already seen an example of the class attributes. Class may not be the best way, and you will also get a information by ExcelQ, but you can always review and you can remove the unnecessary classes, or if you are able to identify the element uniquely without the class attributes, you can take a decision accordingly. Here we have an example of a text attribute. If you see here, the text attribute has a value which is dependent on the user input or the user who is logged in. Now this may not be a good attribute to add for element identification, as the value will change for different users. However, if you have the text attribute and value something like this as shown in the second example, this will be a good attribute to be added. So this is something you can review and take a decision. Now in ExcelQ, we also have a very powerful tool for dealing with dynamic values in attributes, and that is regular expression. You can actually give your value and mark it as a regular expression. For example, let us see this. We have the ID attribute and the value is this, where let's say this part 18AZ is dynamic. So you can actually here give a regular expression and then mark this regular expression checkbox. To show you an example, I will go to a website. I will search for some regular expression website. We have this regexr.com, and here let us say I have a sentence. This is test automation class, and if I have to match a regular expression, I will say this is test automation class. So you can see this is matching, this regular expression is matching this statement or this phrase. Let's say if I change something here, I say this is ExcelQ class. Now it is not matching. If I make some changes here, if I use some characters, I will say dot star. That means there can be anything here. Now you can see this is matching. So you can use regular expressions like this. Also, a good example can be, for example, you have something like, let us say you have emp underscore 12345. This is the value, and you know that this portion can change, this part can change. There will be 5 digits here, but these digits can be anything. So I can create a regular expression. I will say I want to match a text which starts with emp underscore, and then it can have digits 0 to 9, and it should be a total length should be 5. You can see now this is matching. Even if I change this digits, it is still matching. So you can create regular expressions like this. Now just in case you need more examples or want to become more proficient with regular expressions, you can go to this website and you can see some patterns, some references, and some practice material here. Here if I go to the next page, here are some examples, and here is again a reference site which will be very handy and useful to you. If I go here, so this will be very useful. You can see here, you can see some quick references, uses of regular expressions, the style guide, and practice tutorials. So this will help you, and here are some examples. For example, if there are any leading or trailing spaces, you can give a value without the spaces and mark it as regex. And here again is an example that we have seen a similar example, so you can see this as well. Now, to test our knowledge and to see an example, let us see this. We have to design the right set of attributes for the home sale category link. This is an element and you can see all the attributes here. So what will be the right sets of attributes? If I go to the next page, you can see here we have selected the text attribute, which is a stable attribute, and then href, but we have given a regular expression here. We are saying dot star, and we have marked it as a regular expression. So we use text and href with a regular expression so that we can get a unique locator. So these are some examples. All this will be available online and I will add the link in the description of this video. And we have seen some features and we have seen element identification is very powerful with ExcelQ. You have lots of features. By default, ExcelQ uses its own internal algorithm and tries to give you the best possible set of attributes and the locators based on those attributes. But still, you should always review, and based on your requirement you can make the changes and you can create the locators which are best for your automation. I hope this session was very useful for you. Thank you for watching.